now recognize Sam Yoon. Sam Yoon is a leader in our community. He is from Boston, and in November 2005, Sam won an at-large seat on the Boston City Council, which was absolutely historical, becoming the first Asian American ever to hold elective office in Boston. He was born in Seoul, South Korea, and he came to this country with his parents. And I believe that nobody understands the values and the beauty and the virtues of our country than Asian Americans, immigrants, and those are descendants of our own ancestors who come to this country. So he's definitely a product of that. He is a U.S. citizen now, and he attended Princeton University, and he's now running for mayor of Boston. Please help me welcome Sam Yoon.
From the podium as well, if that's okay. Yes. I bring you greetings from the home of the Red Sox, from the home of the Bruins and the Celtics as well. But I want to thank the AAA-Fund from the bottom of my heart for their endorsement in 2005, their endorsement in 2007, and their endorsement this year as I campaign to be the next mayor of the city of Boston. Thank you very, very much. I want to tell you a quick story about an endorsement. In 2005, I was going to New York City because some friends of mine were going to have a fundraiser there. And on my way there was bad traffic, as there typically is, coming up the New Jersey Turnpike and entering New York City. But all of a sudden, I got a call on my cell phone. And it was Mike Honda. So I nearly jumped out of my seat, almost had an accident. And I said, "Congressman, I'm honored that you'd be calling." And he called to basically check up on me. I had just met Congressman Honda at the AAA-Fund in D.C. It must have been not more than just a few months ago. And we talked, and I wanted to know more about the race, wanted to know more about why I was running. I was a well-trained candidate, so I made sure in the middle of that conversation to ask him for his support. But he held back a little bit. And he kept on going with the wisdom and the counsel that we all know and love him for. And by the end of this conversation, he said, "Where are you going, by the way?" I said, "I'm going to New York City." And then he said, "Well, go to New York with my endorsement." And what happened then was that all the cars in the New Jersey Turnpike just turned off to the side. As we got into New York City, every single light was green. There was a shaft of sunlight that broke open from the cut. This is what it meant to me. That's how it felt to have the endorsement of a U.S. congressman for someone, a community organizer who was trying to become a city councilor in Boston, had no ties to the political establishment. That's how it felt. It would be impossible to exaggerate the importance of that endorsement to me. And I have the AAA-Fund to thank for that. But it didn't. I leapt out of my seat because it didn't make sense at the time. Now, in hindsight, of course, we know it makes sense because he bet on the right horse, and I won. But also, it made sense from this point of view, but that for Congressman Hunter, for Mike, there was no time to waste. Yes, he had just met me and asked me a few questions about Boston in this race. He had just met me, but I think the mentality was, we don't have time to lose. And I think that is the challenge of all of us who are Asian Americans working in politics today and in government and for this country. We don't have time to lose. We are the ethnic community in this country who is the least represented in the halls of government, who has the least amount of experience in campaigns and politics. That's just a fact. And yet, our history goes back to 150 years when the Chinese came here to build the railroads. We have to catch up. And so there is no time to lose. Now is the time. And especially now when we have a Democrat in the White House who, as we all know, has some Asian creds. In his sister-in-law and being living in Honolulu and Hawaii. Now is the time for us who are Democrats and Asian Americans to seize this opportunity and to make sure that our presence and our voice is heard in the halls of government from the federal, state, and local levels. And I want to just give a quick plug for the local level. And I think I was inspired just by hearing about Francine Youngberg's fight here in D.C. To maintain an office for Asian Pacific Americans. I come from a state, talking about the state and local level, where the Secretary of State has said, I'm not going to print the names of candidates on a ballot in Chinese. Even though I'll translate the rest of the ballot into Chinese. Because he said it would be confusing for Chinese voters. Because, you know the system, they use the characters that phonetically sound that. It would be confusing for them, so I refuse to. That is a fight that's happening today in the State House through parliamentary procedure. That's the state that I come from. It is important that our voices are heard and our issues are heard at the local level. And so I am proud to have been the first endorsee of a local candidate by the AAA Fund. And when we have a president who is saying, I want to look at urban communities and cities as engines of economic growth, we know that our community tends to be in cities and is part of that economic growth. We know that immigrants are part of that. And so please continue to think about how we're going to support Asian Americans and Democrats at the state and local level. So I want to thank you once again. Before I close my remarks, I do want to acknowledge that we do have some other guests from Boston. Been joined by the Boston Globe. Some of you may have noticed. I want to acknowledge that. I want to thank them for the attention that they're paying me. Because as I embark on this mayoral race, I can use all of that. So thank you. Thank you. I do want to mention, and I know some of you that follow this through the blog has even mentioned this, that I am getting coverage in Boston. Some of it just revolves around Asian American donations that come from out of state. But I want to tell you that I am proud of every single dollar that has come from each of you and from the AAA Fund members from 05, 07, and this year. I'm proud of every single dollar. You know what? Because you're not a developer. You're not a construction company. You're not a vendor who has business with the city. The mayor does not write your paycheck. Your motivation is the purest motivation that there is, which is that you are just proud of who I am, and you want to see me be the best mayor that Boston has ever seen. And that is something that I'm eternally grateful for. And I want to acknowledge that when you contribute to a candidate like me, you're not doing it just for me, you're doing it for us. You're doing it for our community. Because you believe, as the AAA Fund has been doing so well in proclaiming that we have a rightful place in this country, in the halls of government. And when you donate and pay attention to a mayorship, in Boston, you're doing it for all of us. And this is something that we recognize. That's why we're here tonight. And I want to echo what Mike Honda said: empty your wallets, please, and write those big checks. Because what the AAA Fund is doing is so important. I'm a living witness to that. There have been so many who have come through here and will continue to come through here, generation after generation, second and third and fourth generation Asian Americans, who recognize that our voice needs to be heard. And our country deserves nothing less. So thank you very much for recognizing this. Thank you very much for the